You bring your best intention, baby. I bring a bottle of wine. We'll sit here by the fire. Maybe something will happen this time. Are you a little nervous? Can I ease you with my eyes? You say it's getting late, babe. Tonight can be our fate, baby. Why don't you stay, just stay, baby. I wanna feel you next to me. Why don't you stay, just stay, baby. I wanna feel you next to me. Why don't you stay, just stay, baby. Don't wanna lose this energy.
Hello and welcome everyone to Beethewellnes podcast, episode number 18. Adam and Vanessa Lambert here, doing the damn thing.
Yes. Doing it up.
Yes, doing it up. So we are, we just wrapped the June, right, which was the last month of spring. So coming into July,
Yep.
we are looking at a brand spanking new season upon us.
We are. And
Yeah.
it's always weird because I feel like by the time it's actually summer, it's already a million degrees out. So I
Yeah.
guess the season finally catches up with the weather.
Yeah, especially with all this climate change and whatnot,
All the global warming.
whatever it is. It's been weird in California, that's
It
for
has
sure.
been weird this year. Yeah, it's been really strange. So, yeah, so we're going to basically tackle a couple of questions left over from when you guys had your questions in the feed a few weeks ago. And we are also going to talk a little bit about the new season and sort of the goals and training protocols and all that good stuff so you guys can familiarize yourself with the intention of the next season.
Yeah, and I think the intention is a really important part because, you know, we created this program with kind of some specific goals in mind, and we've tried to kind of create some options so that people can kind of get in where they fit in here. And I think that one of the most critical components is understanding the intent so that you guys can modify and change and do things and feel confident that what you're doing is still, well, meeting the intent. Right. So to that end, something worth noting here is that we've written this strength and conditioning program around weighted movements. So which, you know, when you look at the options, it's usually something like the barbell option is what everything is kind of based on. Like this is what the programming is based around. So for example, with the deadlift, you can do the good mornings as the unweighted option, the barbell deadlift or the dumbbell contralateral deadlift, right? So the program is written around the barbell deadlift. And then we offer, you know, an option that you can do with no equipment and something that you can do with minimal equipment. And then, of course, the prescribed exercise being the full-blown either barbell or dumbbell deadlift. And, you know, you can use any other implement here. It doesn't need to be a barbell. It doesn't need to be, you know, even dumbbells or kettlebells. But the idea is that it's a heavy total body lift. That's what we're shooting for.
Got it. I'm on track.
Vanessa's got it. Okay. So deadlift is just one example of that, but the goal being that we need to move some weight, right? So what we want to be sure here is that we're understanding that the body weight only options will most likely not yield the same results as the weighted options for most people. Right? And in fact, the body weight, kind of one of the problems with body weight is that you tend to go the way of chronic cardio where you just keep adding volume, you know, so like once you can do 50 push-ups, how many push-ups do you have to do in order to continue to get adaptation? And at some point we run into that kind of overuse injury situation. And so this is like the perfect example of why we like to add weight to stuff. You can keep the volume down, you can keep the adaptations higher, and it just gives you, you know, some more tools to work in there, right? Some other ways to continue to get adaptation.
And this is an important point because, you know, we know a lot of you folks have come from sort of the primal blueprint background, and, you know, the Mark Sisson thing is, you know, do body weight, do some sprints. But Mark also has a lift heavy things component in his program that's often overlooked. And I think most people just say, okay, well, the lifting heavy things is the body weight movements. And yes, to a certain degree, that's correct. But after you've gotten through that initial adaptation, like what Adam's referring to, the body weight stuff isn't enough unless you want to start putting so much volume onto your workouts that, like Adam said, it does become a little bit more like a cardio workout, because now you don't have anything that's really challenging your system the way it initially did before you worked out and then you started doing body weight workouts. So in order to stay in that same vein and keep that adaptation going, you've got to change up what lift heavy things means.
Totally. Yeah. And that, the 100%, that's the situation. And I'm pretty sure Mark assists in bench presses.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing. Mark totally works out in the gym. So, I mean, it's not a secret by any means, but it's just about kind of reframing that for folks, because I think that a lot of people latch on to those initial concepts and say, oh, I don't have to go to the gym. I don't have to work out. I can just do body weight exercise. And that is true until your body's used to that kind of exercise, and then it's not challenging anymore. And so, totally. Not to go around and around about this, but that's why we end up having to give those of you who are doing the body weight options a lot more volume, because we're trying to elicit some kind of adaptation each time. And we can't do that 16 weeks at a time doing the same body weight workouts. Your body adapts to it and it becomes easy. Yeah.
Yeah. And really we're chasing adaptation. And this is, we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating probably, that starting with the minimum effective dose and only adding complexity or intensity once you stop adapting to the current thing is the way to go. And it's super boring. Like, it's incredibly boring for people. But if you go too fast, if you progress too quickly through the complexities, it's going to be really hard to get your body to adapt to stuff. I mean, this is like the problem you run into with pro athletes. Like, they're tapped out on all of the normal things. 5x5 back squat's not going to do it anymore. You got to get super tricky.
Right. And so, I mean, for me, I don't necessarily think of it as boring. I know, like, it can be a little redundant, but I actually think of it as easy, simple, easy to keep in my life, and easy to keep as a mainstay in my performance goals, because it's not something that I have to go and reinvent the wheel every time. Yeah, totally.
No, I was meaning more that, like, people, I think that there's a tendency to over-program, especially for coaches, because they get tired of telling people to do the same things over and over,
Totally. Yeah. And I think that coaches want their clients to feel like they have this magical new exercise.
No, it's true. No, it's totally true. And that's something we say, not necessarily just on the exercise component, but in the sort of general feeling from a workout component, is like, this is what happens in CrossFit a lot. And because the clients want to feel like they got their ass kicked, so you go to a group class, and what really needs to be programmed is a, foam roll session and, some hip openers and maybe like 75% deadlift and, 500 meters on the rower. But that's not what these guys want. They want, to get their endorphin rush and get, feel like they really got a workout in.
They want to get high.
Right. Like, cool, but, that's only going to last so long. So,
yeah,
anyway,
it's tricky. I mean, because obviously the endorphin rush is what keeps people excited about working out, because it is kind of like those feel-good hormones, or those feel-good neurochemicals. Yeah. And you're just kind of like, okay, this is what I want. This is what
my body wants. I want to feel good again,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, which is totally legit as well. It's just important to understand that we're trying to balance some of that stuff out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we will definitely do body weight stuff in the conditioning front, and it's really good in the conditioning front because you can add like the intensity to it. Like, so for instance, there's some every minute on the minute and like AMRAP stuff coming up, which is all body weight, but that's as much body weight as you can do for a very short period of time, and then you rest.
Right.
And like, that is a great stimulus. They're safe, they're easy, they're things you're familiar with doing, but we're not using them to make you stronger at push-ups. We're using them to generate some sort of, alactic power capacity or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So once again, we're just trying to reiterate that this is really about the overarching themes of how we build strength and endurance and cardio output and all these things at the same time. We're kind of bumping things up next to each other. So you work in one pathway one day and another pathway another day. So your overall wellness and fitness picture comes up at the same time.
Yeah, totally. And, we've kind of been doing a little bit of body weight bashing, which is not really the intent. There are definitely some really solid body weight strength programs out there. And if that's something that you really want to do, but by all means, go for it. If it works for you and you're getting the kind of results that you want from, one of these sort of all body weight boot camp type strength and conditioning programs, I mean, by all means, we're not trying to say you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But
and
if
even,
it's not working, then it's time to do something else.
Right, exactly. And that's actually exactly what we're trying to say. For those of you that are new to the program and you're just in here, 1 or 2 months or even brand new next month, yeah, body weight option is a great option for you. If this is a brand new thing for you, then we're not saying you should be doing the barbell option or the dumbbell option right out the gate. What we're saying is when we look at the long-term goals, we are looking towards getting you to that place because eventually the body weight option won't be as fruitful for you.
Yeah, totally. And it's a year-long strength and conditioning cycle, right? And so if you're one of the powerful tools that we have in doing that is changing up the volumes of training to get sort of different adaptations. And so coming into summer, this is a perfect example because we're going to be dropping the volume of the strength work, but we need to maintain the intensity or the loading, right? So if you're doing all body weight stuff, you're going to kind of miss out on this volume change because we have to keep the volume high on the body weight stuff in order to keep these adaptations. Where if you're actually moving some weight, now we can maybe up your weight, drop your volume, and we're going to maintain your strength without beating you up. And, that's the idea.
Right. And when we say you're going to miss it, the thing is, like Adam said, this is a year-long program. So if you miss it this time, it's not that big of a deal. Get in where you fit in, do what's right for you and your skill level, and know that next time this comes around, you'll be in a different place to approach this differently. So Don't worry like, oh, if I miss it, that's it. I miss the intention of this season and I'll never get it again. Trust me, there'll be another opportunity to circle back to this intention later.
Totally. And, just like with all of this stuff, I mean, we get a little bit into the weeds on it. But the truth of the matter is that for general and the overall health, just doing something, is way better than nothing. But if you wanted to go beyond that, then, that's where we get into the weeds. So
yeah. And with that said, that's another important point because this month and this season we are making playtime and having fun and being active a really important focus. So we are going to give you opportunities to actually even opt out of the traditional workout days and just go play and do things. So like Adam said, there's a lot of wonderful things just from movement, just getting outside. And that's what we're really going to be focused on primarily anyway this season.
Totally. And let's see what else. There's some other stuff probably that's worth mentioning about the strength and conditioning coming up. So we're, kind of like we do in the circuits and the giant set where we have sort of built-in rest. And we're going to continue to do that and actually kind of change it up even a little bit more. So there's going to be more built-in rest into the WODs. And really what it comes down to is that at this point, because we're trying to support lifestyle and play, we're looking for really effective doses of both anaerobic and aerobic power output, right? So we're trying to get you guys to go hard and then recover quickly. Go hard, recover quickly, both aerobically and anaerobically. So that's kind of the deal. You're going to see a few things that are a little bit different. We'll be doing some EMOMs, or every minute on the minute acronym, which is this short series, usually 2 or 3 movements that you'll do. We'll just use deadlift and push up, right? So you'll do 3 deadlifts, 5 push-ups every minute on the minute for a given period of time, right? So the faster you do your movements, then the more time you get to rest before the next one, right? So the EMOMs are a good way to, get your work rest in there. And then we're also going to be doing some partitioned AMRAPs. So the AMRAP being as many rounds or repetitions as possible in a given time frame. And we really like that because you can, it just kind of works good for everybody's fitness level, right? You pick like a weight that's reasonable, and, we'll set some sort of an intention. Like, we'd like you to at least be able to get 1 round per minute, which is kind of the general theme. That's how most of this stuff is programmed, is for you to be able to do at least 1 round a minute. And then you can just kind of go for it, right? So the AMRAPs are cool. The partitioned AMRAPs are something like this, like 3 minutes of work. So as many rounds as possible in 3 minutes, and then some amount of rest, maybe 2 minutes of rest, and then repeat the cycle, right? So we're getting these really gnarly workloads in where you can use a little bit heavier weight and you can really kind of go for it, but we're still getting that work to rest ratio.
Work to west ratio.
Work west ratio that gets what we're looking for. So anyway, that's going to be kind of cool. You guys will be seeing some of that and should be getting some pretty powerful adaptation out of that. We're also bringing back the high resistance intervals. So I'm sure you guys are super stoked about that, those of you who remember them. But we're just going to be programming them as jump squats because I think it's a little easier to control the adaptation, so like hill sprints are another really good way to do it, but how steep's the hill, how sprinty are your sprints, that kind of stuff is a little bit tough to judge. The jump squats, I think, are a lot easier to do. So as we pumped on those.
Yep.
And then cardiac power intervals coming up, right, which are also a super fun way to get in there and really develop some cardiac capacity. So there's a lot more stuff coming from that perspective, but it may seem complex, but just really don't overthink it. It's pretty easy. Just stick to the work rest ratios, and everything else will kind of line up. So there'll be, you can just kind of assume that if we're asking you to work for 5 seconds, you want you to work really hard for 5 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, and if it's hey, give it everything you've got for 5 minutes. That's a very different pace, right? But that's
right.
That's what we're looking
and that's an important part because, if there's a 5-second jump squat for your high resistant intervals, and some of you out there might think, I can only do 1 jump squat in 5 seconds, then that's fine. You might do 1.5, or you might do 1, and then every once in a while you get 2 in there, and that's fine. The idea is to work at the pace that you can work at to get the most in. And over time, it'll increase.
100%. And for those who don't remember it, the high resistance intervals are one that I always have to harp on them a little bit because they're kind of counterintuitive, and people, I don't know why, but we get resistance on them. But the entire goal behind the high resistance intervals is to recruit as much fast twitch muscle fiber as we can, which means explosive kind of movement aerobically. So what it's doing, because normally those sort of explosive movements like that are all anaerobic, right? And if we can increase the mitochondrial density in type 2 muscle fiber, or in the fast twitch muscle fiber, then those muscle fibers start to get used when we're doing just purely oxidative work, like when we go out and do your weighted walking or your tempo intervals or stuff like that, where you're staying pretty oxidative. You're now going to be recruiting those muscles, which means you're going to burn a lot more fat. And that's the secret sauce. So don't skip the high resistance intervals. They're really doing something. And in fact, if it feels like they aren't doing anything, you're probably doing them right, because what you want to be doing is using these fast fibers aerobically, which, doesn't seem like much of a stress on the outside.
Cool.
What else? Man, that's a lot of stuff. Oh, one other thing worth mentioning for sure. We're going to have a couple of different options coming in for the conditioning based on your resting heart rate. So, like, for instance, you'll have a day where it'll say if your resting heart rate is under 60, then do this. If it's over 60, do this. And the goal behind that is to just kind of help filter you guys into more appropriate exercises for your current level. And it'll just kind of help those who don't quite have the aerobic base built up yet continue to do that, while the people with a larger aerobic base, we can kind of work more on maintaining it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the the whole resting heart rate bit, and there's actually a challenge, I think, on the first day to establish your resting heart rate. But if you want to get started now, go for it. Just, first thing in the morning, as soon as you wake up, before you even get out of bed, if possible, just check your heart rate. You can either count your pulse and, do that whole thing, or if you use like Motion X 24/7 or any of those sleep apps, a lot of them have a pulse counter thing using your camera, which is kind of cool. Just determine what that is and keep track, so you've got kind of an average coming into first week of summer. Awesome.
Sounds good. And it's the poor man's HRV.
Yeah, well, they're pretty correlate. They're not. It's not the same thing, but they do correlate.
Right.
If you look at, especially that's something that I've noticed for me for sure, is that when I look at my HRV charts, my resting heart rate is, follows with it pretty smoothly. And I just have a really low resting heart rate. I wouldn't consider myself aerobically fit right now in comparison to other times in my life, but my resting heart rate's like 46. So that's,
when you chill, you really chill.
It's a big heart, it only has to beat every now and then. It's like, boom, boom.
Okay.
Right.
Let's go again.
Lightheaded between these things. And then so for those doing the refeed stuff, just one last thing on the strength and conditioning. Maybe not. There's so much to talk about this month.
There is a lot. That's okay.
That's
though.
Cool.
We have time.
So the carb refeed days, for those of you that are doing that, Mondays and Wednesdays are still going to be the best days. And if you needed to add a third day, I would make it Friday. So the reason being that these are the most, not necessarily the most glycolytic workouts, but the ones that are going to make you the most insulin sensitive. And that's what we're shooting for.
Right. And those of you who don't know what carb refeed means, then you're probably not doing it. And don't worry about it.
Don't sweat it. Yeah.
But those of you who've thought about tinkering with some carb refeeding, that means that you would just be upping the amount of carbs you have on those days to complement the workload. So,
yep, totally. So, Mondays and Wednesdays, and then Friday if you're feeling froggy, or if, just socially, Fridays work better sometimes, it's like Friday night, you can go out and do something and, eat a guilt-free potato. Although I don't think that there are guilty potatoes anywhere.
It's a party potato.
It's a party Yeah. Yeah.
I know. It's pretty sad what you look forward to at your parties these days.
It's true. So true. But, there's other things.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, though. The potato is your friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like potatoes, the potato.
Potatoes are friendly.
I brought them back.
Yep. They're good. The one thing I will say, and I've run into this with a couple of different, in a couple different venues or places, or, that I talk about this kind of stuff, is when you do the refeed, if your primary goal is fat loss, when you do that carb refeed, that meal needs to be very low fat, like incidental to whatever else you're doing. So if you have boiled chicken breast and broccoli and a cup of rice, the chicken is going to be the only thing, providing fat in that meal. And that's it if fat loss is your goal. Right. If your goal is mass gain, then by all means,
don't
sweet
worry
potatoes and butter,
Well, and that's an important point, though, because I think a lot of folks hear carb refeed and they say, okay, I'm going to add a little extra carbohydrate on these days, but they don't do anything with their other macronutrients. And once you're paleo, your fat just tends to be really high.
Yeah.
So this is where we always talk about doing the personal consults, because you could get a little bit wonky with this stuff. If you're not super worried about leaning out, and that's not like a major important thing for you, then you can kind of get away with it. But if you're trying to refeed and make sure that you're leaning out, you got to get a little bit more specific.
Totally.
So that's where the precision paleo.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be super slippery too, especially if you train first thing in the morning, and then, anyway, you can set yourself up for some serious mass gain on accident.
Yes. And it's not very hard to do, because we just by default eat so much fat now.
Yeah.
It's like, and not that we're getting back into a low fat kind of thing, but when you are trying to actually refeed carbohydrate for a specific purpose, then you need to make that your number one goal, and you need to set the rest of your eating habits aside for a second.
Yeah. And it's like that one thing that you just maybe might help to look at it is you just need to pick a fuel source. You're either going to run
Yes.
on fat or you're going to run on carbohydrate when you're talking about these meals. And it seems to be the easiest to control one or the other of them in order to get this sort of result that we're looking for. And we know there's a lot of good things about eating healthy fats, so we're not going to cut those things from our diet. But if you're going to eat a bunch of carbohydrate post-workout to try to manage some of that stuff, that should be a low-fat meal.
Yeah, and it's tricky because anytime I try to do the carb refeeding and go low fat, I hate it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love my fat.
I
It's
know, and
so hard.
It is hard, and then it seems you remember how bad it sucked trying to be a low-fat person. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're like, Jesus, food's horrible. This stuff doesn't taste right. Nothing's right.
And you're depressed. You're like, I don't want to eat this.
Yeah. But
I want butter on my potato.
Yeah, but it does work.
It works, yeah.
And there's some people out there who are super lucky and they can eat fat and carbohydrate and protein in equal amounts in 6 meals a day or however they want to do it, and it all works for them. But man, my experience has been there's very few of those folks.
Yeah. So if we didn't totally confuse you on what you should be eating and how you should be working out next month, hopefully we'll just keep clearing it up as time goes by.
So this is the Confusion Podcast. What we're really trying to do is get more people to do personal consults. You can do this, but I wouldn't do that unless you're doing this. Oh, wait, what did they say? What was the first thing?
This is really confusing. I know, and it does seem like that we're trying to get more personal consults, but it's really like, I just don't know how to explain it because I don't know who you are. Yeah. If you told me your age and your weight and how much you slept and all those things, then I could give you a personal plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Man, we went deep on that. One last thing on the strength and conditioning front. We've added a pull-up program, a sole and separate individual optional pull-up program. Well, I shouldn't say it's sole and separate. It's in the exact same app. It's going to show up. It'll show up in your daily thing. The difference is if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
But if you want to work on some pull-ups, we added this stuff in there, and it should be done in addition to the normal workout. So it's not going to the volume of the pull-up stuff alone is not enough for your strength and conditioning, right? So this should be in addition to the normal workouts for those of you who are trying to do the pull-ups. And there's 2 different sort of linear progression models in there. One for people with 0 to 5 dead hang pull-ups, and one for those with like 6 to 11. I don't know why I picked 11, but that's just kind of the number. Like I feel like if you can do more than 11 pull-ups, then you should just keep doing whatever you're doing.
And then you're winning.
Yeah, because you're already doing good.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are into the pull-ups, that's what's up. It's happening.
Yes. Which is kind of a fun thing to do for summer because, you can monkey around,
totally.
And swing by things, grab a tree branch, try pulling yourself up, all the things. So the next thing we were going to dive into this week is one of the questions that we had, and we just wanted to talk a little bit about cosmetics and some of the kind of how to approach cosmetics, I guess, really. And this is something that I've been tinkering with pretty much for the last, year or so. I've been kind of looking a little bit more in depth to cosmetics and the chemicals and all that good stuff. And since we were talking about, decreasing our chemical load last month, this is a really good way and important way, I think, especially for women to do so. Okay, so cosmetics are not highly regulated. So in fact, when you look at the FDA website, it says specifically under the FD&C Act that cosmetic products and ingredients, I think with the exception of color additives, don't require FDA approval before they go to market.
No, like a supplement.
Yes, exactly. So that doesn't mean that there isn't laws. This is the funny thing. It doesn't mean there isn't laws. It just means that they go to Revlon. Hey, you're following the laws, right? Okay, cool.
Yeah, the self-governed
yes.
thing. We're like, well, we think that the industry experts would be the best people to police the industry, and they all happen to work for the industry.
You're right.
Yeah. Cool.
That's cool.
Hey, Monsanto, is Roundup bad for you?
No,
Nope.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's, it's kind of the case. It's sort of like, all right, well, we're just going to make sure that you give us the thumbs up that what you're doing is safe. And there is a voluntary cosmetic registration program, and the FDA uses this information to evaluate cosmetic products that are on the market, but it's voluntary, it's not mandatory, and basically they use the information available about the cosmetic products and ingredients and the frequency of use and all that good stuff, kind of as case studies and sort of to understand what's going on and to potentially create laws at some point, but it's all very much in the gray area. So it's just like anything. When you're counting on the government to tell you whether or not it's safe, you're probably just going to get a mediocre, protection. Yeah. So, I mean, it's
food like pyramid. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the food pyramid. It's like our meat industry. It's like anything that, at this point, I think all of us pretty much realize that if we followed the government's recommendations on most things, we would not really be focused very much on our wellness.
Totally. And certainly be behind the curve on the research.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest things. And I'm not to stand up too much for some of our regulating agencies, but one of the biggest problems is that the information is changing way faster than the wheels of government can turn.
Right.
So they're just always going to be behind the curve on recommendations, and they're like compressing and trying to buffer these spikes in, oh, this is really bad. Oh, wait, no, it's not that bad. Oh, this is really good. Oh, actually, no, wait, it's horrible. So they're trying to kind of modulate all that stuff.
Yeah. And typically the law changes come from, oh crap, it turns out that did give 1 million people cancer.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah. So maybe you want to be the person who knew that ahead of time.
Yeah. And I think most of the people in this program are those kind of people. That's why you guys are here.
Right.
Because you're seeking out information from sources that you trust.
Right. And
cool.
Obviously we all have an eye towards cancer causing agents. But one of the things that really needs to be addressed is how it affects our hormones, how these things that we are putting topically on our body, on our skin, affects our hormones. And, hormones are really kind of the key to the castle for us. If you've got good hormone regulation, everything's going to be a lot easier. And we talk about how sleep is so important. And the reason that it's so important is that it helps us regulate our hormones. So it helps to signal our body in the correct way that gives us the aptitude for being more healthy. So that's a really important thing. And for those of you, especially once again, women who tend to be bigger consumers of these kind of products, if we're having thyroid issues or you're having acne issues or you're having anything that's sort of hormonally influenced, this is a place to look at and say, okay, what am I using in my day-to-day? What am I getting exposed to day-to-day that didn't even enter my mind to think about?
Never even thought about. Yeah, right. Totally. Yeah. And I have really sensitive skin. Like, it doesn't take much to throw things off. And like, I'll get dandruff really bad, or I'll get, some sort of dermatitis. And it seems like, especially on my face, and it's like anything, fabric softeners, the fragrances and fabric softeners, the fragrances and soaps, this kind of shampoo, that kind of shampoo, deodorant with the wrong stuff in it. It doesn't take much at all to throw things off. And so if you imagine that I'm on one end of that spectrum where there's a lot of, I'm symptomatic and there's a lot of problems.
Right.
I think just like gluten or anything else, there's this spectrum of asymptomatic, zero issues to symptomatic, full-blown issues like a celiac, and then everywhere in between, which is like asymptomatic on the outside, but God knows what's going on the inside.
Or maybe not recognizing the symptoms
for
same way that you would say, the exact same way you're talking about gluten is that, you may actually have an intolerance, but you're not recognizing the symptoms. That's exactly how this goes. So, it's just one of those things. So basically what I've done is, and one other thing is, there's this thing called greenwashing where everybody makes things look safer and more environmental friendly. And they do all of these marketing ploys to make you think that they're actually someone that's thinking about your health and your wellness, or the environment or cruelty towards animals or whatever it may be. They make you think that that is a goal. But when you really actually go and look at their ingredients, they're really not doing much to ensure your safety in these products.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, just marketing.
Yep, it's marketing. It's just
It's like
money.
gluten-free milk.
Yes.
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
Gluten-free.
Gluten-free
You're
water.
No kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I can have this on my gluten-free diet?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the sites that I've become more reliant on is a website called Skin Deep. And you can look things up by name. So if you have a product that you currently use, you can go in there and type it in, and it will give you a rating and sort of a toxicity score on that particular product. So I've been actually doing this as the focus last month. I was getting a little bit more in depth on the products that I use, things that I actually kind of thought were okay, but maybe hadn't done full research, went and stuck them in there and found out what was really going on. And for foundation in particular, you know, because if you're wearing this every day on your face, one of the things that increases the toxicity level a lot of times in foundation is the sunscreen, the additive of sunscreen. So, and you know, everyone's trying to protect us from the sun out there. So everyone's doing us this great, huge favor of adding sunscreen to everything.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's increasing the toxicity level of a lot of products that would otherwise be pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So
for the guys, she's talking about primer.
Face primer.
It's face primer.
Yes.
There's a little bit of putty in there, but it's predominantly primer.
Yes.
I've seen it.
Exactly. And actually most of the products that rank really low are kind of the mineral based foundations that, you know, are more of the loose powder that you can put on your face and apply in that regard. So like I said, for what I recommend women do is go ahead and put your products in there that you're currently using if you like them and you want to keep them, and then you can make an educated decision on whether or not you want to keep them. I use a brand called Jane Iredale, and I use a foundation that I like from them, and it's a 2. So, and I think the scale is 1 to 8. So, 0 to 8. So 0 being the lowest, 8 being the highest in terms of toxicity. And so I go, okay, 2's okay. I read through the ingredients and I'm okay with what's in there. And, you know, if any of you want to check that product out, it's actually a pretty good product. And most of their things rate from 1 to 4. But most of the things that I use, eyeshadow, eyeliner, lipstick, foundation, they're all in the like 1 to 2 range. So that's a great brand that you can check out, Jane Iredale, Iredale. And I know that there's so many other brands out there, but I don't have enough experience with enough brands to give you more recommendations at this time. But if you want, you can also go in and you can just choose cosmetics, and it will give you from the lowest toxicity level to the highest. So you can start looking for brands that way as well. And I've recently done that with shampoo and conditioner, where I just went in, selected shampoo, and it gave me a bunch of brands that were 0 on the toxicity scale. So that's a great resource. I highly recommend it. It's Skin Deep, and, you know, check it out. And I think it would be great for us to start sharing products within the feed and within Unveil Your Wellness of things that we have success with and that we like.
Yeah, we still need to make that easier.
Yeah.
Just like the recipe stuff with that.
Yes.
That's happening. We need to move it to the top of the list.
Yeah, there's
or
a lot.
top-ish.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in the back end that we're trying to establish a reasonable way of getting them organized and out to people. So
yeah. Search
products
functions and stuff.
And recipes are 2 of them that we want to get organized. So we'll be tapping you guys for more recommendations, suggestions on products that you like, and hopefully we'll have a good way to organize
a cool way to do it, for sure. Just, so I figured something out the other day, though, too, not to derail completely from what we're talking about, but you all know there's guides, right? So it's something that I never really thought about, because we don't, you know, it's not like there's some task that's associated with the guide, so we would never really know if you guys ever actually made access. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, at the bottom of your task screen, there's at the bottom left-hand corner of your task screen is a little light bulb. If you click on that light bulb, it'll bring you to the guides section. And there's all sorts of guides in there. There's also the rest of our resources page that has like links and stuff to all the stuff that we think you should have or think it's cool.
Right.
And if you continue to scroll down through the bottom of the guides, you'll see all the daily content. So if you're trying to find, you're like, oh, what was that article that Vanessa posted on whatever? Go to the guides, scroll down, and they show up in the order that they were released in the current challenge.
Right.
So,
yeah,
user tidbit.
Yeah, there's still little nooks and crannies that sometimes people miss, and yeah, the guides are one of them.
Yeah. So check them out, read through. And maybe I'm missing. Maybe everybody's been there.
Yep, absolutely. So we look forward to connecting back with you guys next week. We're in our off week. We hope you're enjoying yourselves on this wonderful sunny week.
Yeah.
Assuming it's sunny wherever you are, because it seems like the world is sunny now.
Oh, it's sunny in California.
Yep.
always sunny in Philadelphia.
Yep.
Whatever. But back to the toxicity stuff, just out of curiosity, do you know what they base, like how natural do you have to be a zero?
Well, it's not based on whether you're natural or not. They actually pull out each ingredient and they list the concerns associated with each ingredient. Gotcha. So, they may say this is a known carcinogen, or they may, they'll actually list what the known potential problems are with that particular ingredient. And then they'll put it, and that kind of ranks.
So like if you have one questionable ingredient, you may still be a zero.
You probably won't be a zero, but you might be a one. So the more questionable ingredients, the worse the score.
Like how many rabbits?
Yeah, and to be honest, there may be a weighting. Like if there's something that they're like, no, this one's just really bad.
Yeah, this one has lead.
This one has lead. That bumps it to an 8. I think there may be a weighted system as well, but for the most part, it breaks down to any ingredient that they're concerned about and what the concerns are. That's so cool. That you can make an educated decision on whether or not you're willing to risk that.
That's super cool.
Yeah, and the cool thing is there's still a lot of products out there that we can use. That's why this month we kept trying to say, this is not about stressing you guys out. This is just about awareness. So if you're already paying $50 for a bottle of foundation, or even $20 for a bottle of foundation, you can spend the same amount of money and get one that has less chemicals in it.
Yeah.
It's like...
The more you know.
Totally.
Is that G.I. Joe?
Shira.
Oh, you know. No.
My Little Pony? No. I don't know.
No, there was one of the
Knowing
cartoons.
is half the battle.
Knowing is half
Joe.
the battle.
Yes.
Yeah. Good job.
Okay. So I think that's it. We are just looking forward to sharing the summer with you. We know a lot of you guys are going to be busy. Things are going to get crazy. Don't worry about life happening. This is what we are here for, to, make these parameters for life to stay on track even when it gets off track. And you just enjoy yourselves, live life, play, have fun. We're here. We're doing this with you. We're doing the same thing. Sometimes we get off and it's all good.
Yeah, totally. Okay, peoples.
Okay.
Well, enjoy the rest of your week. We will speak with you very soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Baby, I wanna feel you next to me. Why don't you